Hello students, today we are going to continue reviewing for the Unit 2 topics that are going to be on your final exam. Please make sure you have out that white packet from yesterday. We're going to start on the page that we ended on. We'll do one more example together and then you guys are going to do some practice on your own. Alright. So we did number 1 and number 2 yesterday in class, so now we're going to do number 3. So again, for these, we are determining whether the graph ordered pair or mapping is a function or not, and then determine whether it is continuous or discrete. So the first thing we want to do is see if this is a function or not. When we're determining if this is a function or not, we want to look at the x values. So let's look over here at the x values. Are there any x values that go to more than one y value? So we're looking at those lines that are coming off of the x values. None of them have more than one line going off of each of them, so we know that yes, this is a function. Determine whether it is continuous or discrete. Well, we talked about that yesterday. Only a graph can be continuous. Everything else is always discrete. So since this is a mapping, we would have a discrete function here. Alright, so now pause the video and take a few minutes to practice on those. If you get done with that page, then you can flip back to the other two pages, or on the very back you can do a mixture practice. Okay, hopefully you've done those. We will go over those on Monday if you have any questions. Let's look at the fourth page. The directions tell us to write the equation in slope-intercept form for the given table. Alright, so like we talked about yesterday, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where the m value is our slope and the b value is our y-intercept. So we need those two numbers in order to write our equation in slope-intercept form. So the first thing we want to do is find our slope, which is our m value. And to find slope, we want to look at the change in y divided by our change in x. So if we look at our y values, we want to look at this pattern that we have in our y values. So how do we get from -2 to -4, -4 to -6, -6 to -8, and -8 to -10? Well, as you can see, we are subtracting 2 each time. So that's going to be our change in our y values, -2. And then we're going to do the same thing for our x values. So how do we get from 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, and 9 to 12? And as you can see, we are adding 3 each time. So that's our change in our y or our x values. And since it's a positive 3, we don't have to include that negative in there like we did when we were subtracting 2 for the x values. So our slope then is -2 over 3. That cannot be reduced anymore, but if it can, you need to make sure you reduce it. Our y-intercept then, or our b value, we want to find on the table in our x values, where is x equal to 0? And in this one, it's the very first one. So when x is equal to 0, what is y? And our y value is -2. So that tells us that our equation of this line is y equals -2/3 x minus 2. Alright, let's look at another one. Again, we want to find our m value and we want to find our b value. Alright, so our m value. We're going to look at our pattern here. How do we get from -6 to -5 to -4 to -3 to -2? Well, looks like we're adding 1 each time. And then if we look at our x values from -4 to -3 to -2 to -1 to 0, again, we are adding 1. So our change in y divided by our change in x is 1 over 1, and 1 divided by 1 is 1. And then if we want to find our y-intercept, we go in our x values to when x is 0, what is y? And I promise it's not -2 every single time, but in this case it is -2 again. So to write our equation, we have y equals 1x minus 2. Or you can just write y equals x minus 2. Either way is fine. On a multiple choice test, it's going to be written without the 1, so just be sure you know that. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video again and take a few minutes to practice the rest of those. You should get through all of those. If you need some help on that, make sure you look back at the 2 examples we just did. If you get done with those, go back to ones that you have not finished on previous pages. Alright, hope you finished those. Let's move on to the next one. The next one gives us a graph, and we need to write the equation in slope-intercept form, which again is y equals mx plus b. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do on this one is find my y-intercept. So I'm going to go to my y-axis, which is the vertical one, and see where it crosses. And it crosses down here at -4. So I know my y-intercept is going to be -4. So now I need to find my slope. I'm going to start at my y-axis, or my y-intercept. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. And then I'm going to go to another point on my graph, and I'm going to count how many do I go up and how many do I go over to get there. Well, I'm going to go up 1, so my change in y is a +1. And then I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, and I'm going backwards, so my change in x values are going to be a -3. So 1 over -3, well, that cannot be reduced, so my slope is just -1/3. So my -1/3 goes in front of the x value, and then y equals goes in front of that. Alright, let's look at one more. So again, first thing I'm going to do is go to my y-axis and find where my graph crosses the y-axis. And in this case, it's at a +2. So my y-intercept is a +2. And then just like before, I'm going to go to another point on my graph. Remember, sometimes that point is the arrow. So if you can't find another exact point, go to your arrow. It's not always the arrow, but in this case it is because it's an exact point on the graph. And then I want to find my change in y, which is up 2, so it's a +2. And then my change in x, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going in the positive direction, so that's also a positive. So my slope 2 over 5, we can't reduce that at all, so we just go ahead and put it in the formula. So the equation of this line is going to be y equals 2/5 x plus 2. Alright, go ahead and pause the video and do some more practice with those problems. Make sure you get all of those done. Make sure you're finding the slope and the y-intercept and putting those in the correct places for y equals mx plus b. Alright, hope you get some good practice on that. Make sure you finish up those if you haven't done so already. Let's go to the next one. Our next one is to write the slope-intercept form of the equation of the line through the given point and the given slope. So this is kind of like what we did yesterday in our open response problem that we did. We're already given the slope, so we don't need to find it. So we're going to go straight to point-slope form. Alright, so we only have 1 point, so we're going to use these as x1 and y1, and then this is our slope, m. So when we're putting these in, we have y minus, our y1 is a negative, and we talked earlier a double negative makes a positive, so we're going to make that a y plus 1, equals, our slope is negative 3, parentheses, x minus, and then this one's a positive, so we don't change that at all. We only change it if it's a negative up here in the point, because we have that double negative which makes positive. Alright, to get rid of these parentheses we need to distribute. So we have y plus 1 equals negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 1 is a positive 1. Sorry, positive 3. And then to get y by itself, we'll just subtract 1 from both sides because we want to do the opposite. So our equation then is y equals negative 3x plus 2. And that is the slope-intercept form of the equation. Alright, let's do one more. So again, we want to go straight to point slope form because it already gives us the slope. Alright, so we have y minus 5 equals our slope, negative 3 halves, parentheses x, and that's a double negative, so we're going to change that to plus 4. Just like before, we're going to distribute, so y minus 5 equals negative 3 halves times x is negative 3 halves x. And negative 3 halves times 4, you can type this in your calculator, just negative 3 divided by 2 times 4, or to multiply a fraction by a whole number, we just put this whole number over 1 and multiply straight across. So negative 3 times 4 is negative 12, 2 times 1 is 2, and negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Alright, then we want to get y by itself, so we want to add 5 to both sides. So our equation turns out y equals negative 3 halves x, and then negative 6 plus 5 is a negative 1. So that is our equation. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and take a few minutes to practice. Remember, we're using point slope form here. The y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Alright, hope you had a few minutes to practice. Now these next ones are very similar to the last one, but we do have to find the slope first. So remember our slope formula is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And remember our x values always come first in our ordered pairs. So our y2 is negative 4 minus 4. And then our x2 is a negative 1 and our x1 is a 1. So negative 4 minus 4 is negative 8. And negative 1 minus 1 is a negative 2. And negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. So now that we've done that, we'll just put this in point slope form. So we have y minus y1, which is 4, equals m, which is 4, times x minus x1, which is 1. So again, that same point slope form that we used last time. So we're going to go ahead and distribute. So we have y minus 4 equals 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. And then I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So y equals 4x. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0, so we just have y equals 4x. Alright, go ahead and practice through those problems now.